All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new series that's focused on Fortinet, specifically with your XenTegra team. I'm Chris Dorn. I'm the Practice Director of Networking at XenTegra. I've been over here about 9 years, a little bit over 9 years now. I've done everything with the deployments and Citrix ADC, SD-WAN for multiple vendors, and kind of as we started to zone in on where XenTegra was going to go with the security and networking play, we found that Fortinet basically had a solution set that was bar none superior as far as the stack end to end. And from the technical side, I've been super impressed. And as we've gone down the journey in the channel with them, I've been even more impressed with their ability to partner with us. So with this series that we're starting now, we're going to break apart all the different Fortinet components. We're going to start out on a high level here, introduce the various components, and kind of play it off of the security fabric. So what we do with some of the other podcasts that XenTegra has, we'll kind of search the blogs that vendors have. And one that I found with Fortinet was an article written in November by John Madison that's kind of touching on the most complete work from anywhere security solution, and I, of course, 100% agree with that. And wanted to use that to kind of play into how XenTegra can do that with Fortinet solutions for you, and the security challenges that people are presented with anymore. And I thought this article was a nice way to kind of have a segue into how this is going to play out. And then I have a couple guests that were able to join me today for this first one. And thank you guys for being here. I'll introduce you guys individually, and then as we kind of roll through it, maybe your first time kind of speaking to any of the parts, if you wouldn't mind just reinforcing your role and title and everything at your various companies here. But I have Kevin Palumbo. He's joining us from Fortinet. He's a regional account manager that's really helped us with one of the pretty large deals that we have that's kind of rolling into a global security fabric for the customer that we have been working with here the past couple of months. And then I have Ryan Thompson. He's a solutions expert with the Ingram Micro Fortinet team. So I work a lot with Ingram Micro, and most all the deals that we do here at XenTegra are facilitated to some degree through Ingram Micro. So a very integral part of our success here at XenTegra. And then also Michael is joining us from Ingram as well. So Michael Wier, thank you very much for being here. And Tyrion Wallace joins us with from the One Marksman side, and he's the Chief Strategy Officer with that company. And we have a strong partnership between One Marksman and XenTegra that's really helping to take our Fortinet presence and what we're doing with them in the channel to the next level. So to kind of recap on how we're going to look at this series, I want to kind of take it at a very high level, and then we'll dig into the individual parts based off feedback and the different guests that'll show up at this podcast while we're recording it and looking at the different components and everything. And then we'll play into those a little bit deeper. So not everything will be super high level. Some of these will be more technical in nature, and we'll drill into it. But I want to be able to share transparently like the Fortinet journey that XenTegra is on. We're not just like a reseller of this. We're actually implementing a full stack Fortinet solution inside of our own managed services provider. So some of it's kind of new to me. I've personally been through the training from the sales side through the NSE certifications up to level 3, and I'm looking to take that to the next step and venture into the level 4 area. And I think, was it Ryan? Did you say you had NSE 7?
No, that was me.
That would be Mike.
Sorry, Michael. Oh, very cool. So yeah, so we have some expertise on the phone with us here as well, and looking to get this kicked off. So thanks for being here, and looking forward to this journey we're about to embark upon. So, guys, XenTegra itself, we came from a virtualization, stack, and end user computing. And really, what we found, is that we were really good with the end user computing, but we were dealing with teams that were like managing the edge and the security and how people get to the resources that folks are presenting from within their infrastructures, whether it's on-prem or if they were hosted in a public cloud or if it was just a true SaaS app. But at the end of the day, especially with all the security vulnerabilities, that be it firmware or just the way things are deployed inside of these organizations, security in 2021 really bumped up to the next level. It was like really a hot topic, and it really should have probably always been a really hot topic, but we found that, things have become stale inside of organizations, or the policies weren't necessarily in play, or operational technology, for example, had not been discussed and might be a need inside of an organization. So there really seems to be like a lot of new components to securing these networks inside of these customer environments. And what I saw through that end user computing and the NetScaler was a tool that I worked with a lot, the Citrix ADC, is that, we'd have like your edge firewalls on maybe either side of that ADC, but that they weren't really, they weren't addressed a lot, or they had a team that maybe was working with them a little bit, but it wasn't as simplistic as it might need to be. And what I have found with a little bit of time over the past year and a half or so with working with some of the Fortinet solutions is that it was a really nice complementary component to folks that might be systems engineers and not really a hardcore networking engineer, but that the networking engineers could really, they're really gravitating to this as well, because they're seeing the flexibility and the capabilities of the Fortinet solution stack as being something that's kind of bar none as compared to some of the other vendors. So with that, I want to give you guys each a little bit of time maybe to talk about it and where you see and what you have seen over the years with Fortinet, and why maybe it's something that you like to express as a go-to solution provider, as a vendor. So maybe we'll kick it off here and start with you, Michael. Again, Michael with Ingram Micro. Thanks again for being here. So with that, the security challenges and the zero trust access and how folks are evolving their security posture inside their environments today. What makes you? Why do you think that Fortinet is one of those leaders, if not the ultimate leader in this area?
Right. Well, Fortinet likes to pull on three terms anytime they describe themselves. That's broad, integrated, and automated. And all three of those kind of play into the zero trust message. So the idea of zero trust itself is a little bit of a misnomer, because true zero trust, nothing would work. The idea is that you're zero trusted when you get on the network, and then once you're identified, you have as little trust as possible to still be able to do your job. And in order for that to work out, you have to be in such a position that you can see the entire network. And that's what I said about the broad and integrated there on the Fortinet side of things. So Fortinet has an end-to-end networking stack. So everybody knows the FortiGate is their firewall. They also have FortiSwitches and FortiAPs. They have a FortiNAC, which is a network access controller, FortiWeb, which is a web application firewall, FortiADC, basically FortiClient, FortiEDR, FortiCWP, FortiCASB, all these things that control access to different parts of your network are all in the Fortinet security fabric. And that means that when somebody needs access to that part of your network, any one of those pieces can communicate with all the other pieces. For example, let's say you've got a FortiGate, FortiSwitch, and FortiAP out there, and somebody comes in and they get on your Wi-Fi. Well, the FortiGate, being the brain of the thing, says, all right, this person has gotten on the Wi-Fi. Let me take a look at their identity. It looks at either their single sign-on, device type, what have you, to decide where they get sorted as soon as they get on the network. And once they get sorted, now that determines the rest of their access. Or look at it another way, FortiClient can tag assets. So based on posture. So we can say, all right, when my laptop gets on, now I get a point where I can say, based on this tag, this is where the person gets to go on the network. And if there's any security information about that endpoint or other identity information that needs to be passed around, it's passed around to everything else in the network. And it does the same thing if you're coming in remote. So
Right.
if you have somebody that's, VPNing in, or have somebody that's behind FortiSASE, obviously our SASE solution, because we like to name things that way, the same holds true. When they're getting on the network, they're not trusted until they're identified, and when they're identified, they're given the least amount of access possible. Once again, because it's a unified system, it's a broad integrated system. And then of course the last one, automated. I sort of alluded to the fact that if you can have things make decisions for you, rather than have to make those decisions and propagate those decisions network wide, you're more secure because you're acting at the speed of a machine, not the speed of a relatively slow human mind.
Yeah, and we're recording all that, so we're logging with the FortiSIEM, and potentially placing violated policies and users into the sandbox environment, and taking that automated, like you're pointing out, the automation piece to it with the XDR and FortiSOAR solutions that we can layer on top of that. And those are pieces that I do not honestly have any hands-on experience with at this point, but they are a huge component of meeting the compliancy requirements that are being mandated anymore. And customers big and small might be able to take that on, or they could leverage possibly our MSP from Fortinet or from XenTegra to help deliver that for them, or you could subscribe to it. And I really look forward to kind of addressing those in a more granular fashion as we move forward, so that they can be broken down a little bit more, and then folks can really see the different options that they have with deploying components like that.
Oh yeah. And I can toot my own horn again on that a little bit too. I didn't mention it, but I'm actually our tech force lead for standards and compliance.
Okay.
So I'm on board with what you said there. The biggest two things that are going to come into compliance in 2022 is going to be where is your information going, and who is going to or with. So if you, like you said, if you got a SIM, a SOAR, an XDR solution, something along those lines, you don't just say this person got on the network. You say when this person got on a network, this is what they accessed, and when they accessed it, this is where they took it. Number one, so your information is more secure, but number two, so if something happens, you can trace the entire path of it and remediate or recover whatever it is that went wrong.
Yeah, that's something else, It's not just the firewalls and the switches and the access points here. We're actually taking it to the next level and doing something very tangible and with that data that we're collecting. So it's definitely, I think, one of the big differentiators between some of the other vendors with the options, that soup to nuts stack that we're looking at here. Very cool. Oh, yeah. So let's touch a little bit with Kevin. So Kevin has been working with us on the West Coast, been helping put together solutions that we're working with one of our customers that has a global initiative to standardize on Fortinet around the world. And it's been a pretty cool journey so far. So I think Kevin kind of got thrown into this ride with XenTegra, maybe your first couple weeks of working at Fortinet, but maybe you could chat about that a little bit with us, Kevin, and give us a little bit of insight into your experience so far with everything.
Yeah, sure, Chris. And again, just for the audience here, my name is Kevin Palumbo. I'm a regional account manager at Fortinet in the Southern California area. And even though I'm a little bit newer to Fortinet, I joined in September of 2021. I've spent some time in the industry one way or another in previous roles for about 10 years. So, familiar with some of these terms, and I've gotten to experience a lot of Fortinet strong points very early on, Chris, like you mentioned, working on this large deployment. And I think, without getting into particular technologies, I think it really starts with, what's Fortinet's focus as a company and an organization, and security's top of mind throughout the entire portfolio. We have a lot of technical, whether it be pre-sales engineers, support, professional services. There's a broad range of technical resources Fortinet has in order to help customers and partners implement these strategies. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have about triple the amount of patents in this space as compared to our nearest competitors, and it really just speaks to how we want to develop this stuff in-house. So I think that's another differentiator when you have all these different products. Some companies focus on one area in particular. It might just be like firewalls for the network and for the cloud, right? Some might bolster their portfolio through acquisitions, right? So they start adding these other pieces. But with that comes a lot of challenges, as far as implementing these things and getting them to talk to each other and really work smoothly. And Fortinet has a much more native, development, focus internally to create these things ourselves so that they all operate, with each other efficiently. And like Michael mentioned, I like to try to break things down, as a salesperson into 3 different categories. And I like to break it down into like network, cloud, and endpoint, as far as some of our big focuses, right? And I think, network obviously has been a focus for people to secure endpoints to a certain extent, having some sort of antivirus on. Cloud's definitely accelerated. But I think people with this work from anywhere, that's been accelerated by COVID, really people are trying to get these solutions to talk to each other better. And like Michael said, to take action in an automated fashion and not rely on, someone on the security side to click a button to block something. So that's where, when it comes to our security fabric, I like to try to simplify it into just thinking about like teamwork between different solutions. And with the spirit of, the Super Bowl coming around, I try to break it down like a football team's defense, right? You could pick the best solutions in each category. You could pick the best D line, the best linebackers, the best, DBs and everything. But when you select all these different solutions from different providers, it's like sticking them in a bubble, right? They're not really communicating with each other to a certain extent. They only see, the threat as it approaches them. So think about having these different solutions that are, centralized on a Fortinet and using our FortiGuard labs as a central brain for cybersecurity, to where we can communicate with all these different points, whether it be endpoint, cloud, or network. So if we see a threat somewhere, we can protect everything, right? It's not just at the endpoint. It's not just in the cloud. It's not just on the network. So you start to get these things working together, and it creates a much more cohesive defensive strategy.
Yeah, nice. And a lot of that, I guess, is developed in-house with the inside of the Forti Labs. Is that correct?
Yeah, like the FortiGuard Labs is kind of like our central brain for like threat intelligence that basically is connected to all parts of the portfolio.
So that you're pointing out of what I feel is like a tremendously valuable component, with Fortinet's go-to-market there. It's 100% developed in-house, and we're not relying on like APIs and plugging stuff in where it'll probably work, but there's a lot of legwork that has to go in and make those integrations happen, whereas you guys are like right there in the marketplace with that capability across the board. So there's a lot of time that can be saved with standing up these infrastructures and the security deployments to meet the needs of today's requirements. I think that's pretty cool. And I guess maybe back up a little bit for the company overall, was founded in 2000. So kind of when I was starting to get into IT, kind of came into the whole practice as a developer in the beginning, but kind of moved over to the system side, and I tried to do a little bit of the networking side at the time, but kind of got my interest kind of pulled me back to the virtualization area for my professional career. So the past couple of years, and really focusing on the networking practice inside both the data center and then how users interact with that in the remote world that we live in now has been pretty awesome. And just to back up what you were stating, both you, Michael, and Kevin, we have a soup to nuts solution here again that's developed in-house with the Forti Labs support. That's pretty unique. I don't see that a lot with a lot of the other vendors. They might go out and make subscriptions to 7 or 8 different companies and aggregate all that data before releasing it into their solutions. But this is really coming from that one-stop shop again. So everything under one umbrella there. It's kind of how we're looking at it a little bit. So I'll give and thank you, Kevin, and for pointing that out. And I'll see what Ryan's 2 cents are with like kind of what he's seeing in today's world and why something like the Fortinet security fabric that they have is so valuable to customers big and small. What are you seeing especially from the Ingram side, where the requirements are kind of coming down the line, and why Fortinet might be a solution that can help the customers really kind of get up to speed and get to where they need to be in a quickly and cost-effective manner. I think that's something I didn't point out too when we were chatting a moment ago. Is the cost factor here is pretty substantial. I've seen some of the bigger vendors, and the price tag that comes with that, and a lot of times that's a pretty scary price tag that's presented to users. Whereas what I have found, especially with the bundles that have been presented more recently, is that folks can get into the Fortinet stack and get a couple different components pretty easily. So maybe Ryan, you could elaborate a little bit on what you're seeing from that side and why customers are finding this to be a very happy journey that they embark upon with the Fortinet solutions.
Yeah, for sure. Just for anybody that's listening, Ryan Thompson, Ingram Micro. I am Fortinet dedicated, and I've been with Ingram for about 4 or so years now. A little bit newer to Fortinet myself too. I came on in August of 2021. But having some background supporting some other providers here on the Ingram side, I can say, and this is kind of a little bit to echo Mike and Kevin, that seamless integration and having those multiple solutions that kind of speak to each other in a uniform fashion and make it a really cohesive approach to zero trust is a big differentiator. I mean, even some of those other providers that might have multiple solutions for different problems, their own products don't always integrate as seamlessly as a lot of what Fortinet does. And I mean, the work from home environment is hard enough. With multiple access points, multiple home networks, it can be tricky to navigate when you have multiple solutions kind of trying to speak to each other from different vendors for kind of different security solutions. It really just adds another hurdle to those teams that are trying to make it as seamless and uniform and automated, as Mike said, as possible. And from an affordability standpoint, I mean, there are lots of ways that there's deal registration opportunity to kind of make these multi-set solutions affordable for smaller customers too, which is great. When you're kind of shopping around and trying to figure out what fits best with your environment, to be able to have those package solution sets, at an affordable price. It is a huge deal, especially today where these things, a lot of times within compliance you have to have or you just want to have to make sure that you're enforcing that zero trust policy.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I've been pointing that out myself, when I'm having some of the pre-sales calls and different discussions with clients. It's like, I'm pointing out that like you're getting that enterprise code that you're paying top dollar for from some of the other vendors, but you don't have that enterprise price tag that necessarily comes with it. So it's just been a remarkable feedback we've had from our customers, and that might be the shop that has a tiny 40 series FortiGate,
Yep.
to we're putting the 1800s in on our edge and the 1100s in the core for the micro segmentation to handle our east-west traffic, and it's just amazing. So been very happy with this ride that we've been on from the XenTegra side so far, and really hoping to continue that. And one of the reasons of starting this series of podcasts is because I have so much interest in it, and since it's still kind of new to me and I'm embarking personally upon that journey to really kind of tackle and hopefully specialize in some of the areas that I find most beneficial, not only to myself but our customers. I wanted to take our listeners on that journey as well. So,
hey Chris, I was also, this is Kevin. I was also just going to talk to another point, in regards to like compliance and being able to deliver to a wide variety of customers, no matter the size of the organization. With these different solutions tying into like a central, Fortinet ecosystem on a, whether it be the FortiGuard Labs is like the cybersecurity part of it, or our FortiOS to kind of keep things in sync. I think having this centralized approach to these things also delivers the ability to execute on these things, right? We've all seen really complex diagrams of customer networks and everything, and using different solutions here and there. I mean, it can get really daunting for a customer to really digest that stuff, which obviously is why we have partners like XenTegra that help them understand those strategies. But I think what a Fortinet's besides the cost-effective manner is, you could design all you want, but then you got to execute. And I think we deliver a high ability to execute within this strategy that we offer for the security fabric.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the strong points that I find keeping everything underneath that single vendor approach, and we looked at some of the pros and cons already, but I think to elaborate a little more on some of the pros here is like, when I would do a lot of delivery and have hands-on and I update the firmware on one component, that I'm there to tackle, but I might interfere with another component because the protocols or the ciphers, or there's a lot of different things underlying that can play into like how these things actually flow and talk to each other. And you might break that, and it's like, well, I updated what you asked me to update, but sorry, your users are having problems connecting now. And that's a huge part, a time waster. But it's really hard to like take somebody's complete infrastructure and replicate that so that you can prepare effectively beforehand. And how you circumvent that is like, I feel like keeping everything underneath one vendor who's not necessarily going to release that code until it's tested internally with something like Forti Labs and the engineers that you have internally on staff. And I think that can greatly reduce any unknowns, any complex components that weren't addressed beforehand during any assessments, or you might not have time for assessments. You might have to, you got a 0-day vulnerability. You might have to hop in immediately and take care of that by patching something that, you don't really know every time. So, again, I think that having that under one name and one technical expertise is very beneficial and valuable to our customers.
Oh yeah, it's
yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say it's worth noting too that Fortinet catches more 0 days than any other manufacturer as well. And if a 0 day is caught locally or caught on your Forti sandbox, then that through Fortinet's virus outbreak prevention is distributed to the rest of your environment too. So it's not just that it's been stopped once; your whole environment becomes hardened to it instantly upon detection.
And that's extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. And who else was going to say something?
I was just going to, add on, Chris, to what you're talking about as far as, I think a lot of customers and partners can relate to, when you have these different solutions from different vendors, like, in my experience, we get involved sometimes in support escalations and things like that. And, when you use different vendors for all these different pieces, it kind of becomes habit for different vendors to like point the finger at the other solution, right? So you've got these multiple tickets that are opened up with all these different, vendors, and you're coordinating calls and everything that sometimes just be like super difficult to handle something that's should be a little bit more simple, so having that kind of central support with Fortinet in order to attack these different, if an issue comes up, you can address it, whether it's in your cloud environment, on your endpoints, on your network, or, whether it be at a small branch or at the HQ, and you've got this central focus to get it fixed. Yeah,
that's very true, Kevin. I've had $1 for every time I've been in that situation. That's not a pleasant place to be. Just makes it a little tougher to get that solution kind of, figured out and hammered out and get the users back to what they're expecting. And that's, everything's working properly and effectively. And we have that security in play. Very good point to note there. So, that's at a high level, that's kind of like the fabric itself. I think we kind of pointed out there's a Forti for basically everything, a Forti component that we'll be able to put into play there. But I think we touched a little bit on it earlier, but the OS itself is such a vital component of it, and the intelligence that's built into that. And the engine that kind of runs that OS is really kind of streamed. I see it at the top of the pyramid as being the FortiGate solution. That seems to be like the broker to the things that are in the cloud, and then controlling that fabric on-prem inside of your environment. It was kind of newer to the general availability, to the public, that is, that Fortinet OS 7, Forti OS 7 was released not too long ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it had like 64, 65 new features that were introduced with that operating system. Is that correct? Any of you guys know?
Yeah, you're basically right. You're basically right. And kind of like how Fortinet's 6.4 operating system really pushed their SD-WAN to like be, the Gartner Leader Quadrant solution it is, and that sort of thing. 7.0 is aimed at really pushing the ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access solution to also the top of the pyramid. So most of those things that were added were specifically around this concept of Zero Trust Networking Access.
Okay, gotcha. See, I'm learning. I'll continue to learn, and I'll get as much out of this series as hopefully anybody's listening out there. Yeah. So, well, with that, I guess some of the security components that we didn't necessarily see a couple of years ago, as the IoT and new devices that we're placing into these organizations that are basically unmanned, and people plug them and set them and forget them. But those components presented security factors that weren't necessarily addressed when they were ordered and plugged into the environment. And now you have tons of broadcast messages shooting all over your network, and how do you deal with that? How do you secure that? And it's I think really when Fortinet went into that OS 7 that they really took a lot of those factors into play there. Wanted to make sure that they were addressed and kind of future-proof the whole fabric and framework for a long time from now.
Oh yeah, and Fortinet also has some packages you can get for the FortiGate that watch non-IP protocols too, for those with big, older OT or ICS environments that can watch things like SCADA commands going back and forth. So any little hole in your network is a place that data can get out. It doesn't matter the protocol these days.
Yeah, exactly. And there's packages that we have, that make it kind of easy to hop in and figure out the solution for that issue that the customer might want to be addressing. We might look at a bundle file from Fortinet to roll in the FortiGate itself, but also the subscription. And I think it was the enterprise level bundle where you start to get the OT protocols addressed in that. Okay.
You got it.
Yeah, and we'll dig into the OT area as well. I'm working with some of the Michael Hooper on the back end with Fortinet, really kind of addressing our go-to-market strategy from XenTegra to differentiate us from maybe some of the competition, but really kind of help our customers in a lot of the areas in the industries that weren't necessarily addressed by XenTegra. We want to be able to bring that same community and support that we've been able to do with some of the other vendors with the Fortinet solutions. And again, we're putting Fortinet up there as one of our focused vendors and really kind of taking to the next level with them as a partnership.
Yeah, Chris, I was just going to add on to something as far as, while we're talking high level, and I guess this kind of tacks on to the ability to execute part. But, one of the things I liked about Fortinet compared to where I've been previously is the flexibility for deployment methods. So, we have physical appliances that could be deployed. There's VM-based solutions, there's cloud-based solutions. And I think that's really important in today's world while we're dealing with these supply chain issues, right, on physical chipsets and whatnot, that we have the ability to deploy these things in different ways. And sometimes it might be, based on supply chain, we maybe want to do something cloud-based, but other times it's also like compliance. So sometimes we have customers working with, a lot of government contracts that need, FIPS 140 compliance or something like that. So they stick to more physical appliances in-house or something. So I'm sure Michael could speak to that a little bit more, but that's one thing I've enjoyed is in previous roles, I've been limited to one way of deployment. And at Fortinet, it's not a matter of like if we can do it, it's a matter of how we do it best that meets the customer's needs.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Fortinet, the operating system, there's feature parity from the smallest to the largest device. It's not like some other manufacturers where, if you get the small one, you only get half the features and that sort of thing. And like was just alluded to, besides just your FIPS 140-2 compliance, that Fortinet has products that will meet pretty much any compliance or standard you can find out there that's specialized as needed, or you can find reference documents and certificates on and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's something else. Really a differentiator there. Yeah, it seemed like with a lot of the vendors previously, it's like you could do the security piece, but you couldn't do the switching environment, or you could do the switching environment, but you couldn't do the APs, or a slew of different things. We could give you some kind of some kind of endpoint detection, but we might not necessarily be able to, give you the automation that you need based on any events that happen there. So it really, what drew me to the Fortinet solution, and again, not only the way that they go to market and support their channel in those relationships, but also just the overall complete solution stack, because if it's not in there, you probably don't need it. I mean, honestly, there's that many components to it. So it's just been a little bit overwhelming sometimes when it's like when you look at the number of things there, but at the same time, if they didn't have it, then again, you probably didn't need it. But it's there now. So yeah, very nice stuff. So with that, as we continue down this journey with this podcast series, we'll kind of look at the individual components here. I think over the next couple, there's some key elements that really play into building these security fabrics. One of those, again, the main part is like the FortiGate, the firewall solution. It's kind of it doesn't have all the brains, but it's kind of the leader inside of your organization with how it's distributing and monitoring and taking action against threats. And then we'll look at some of the other pieces after that with like the FortiManager, like how do you manage all this centrally? And there's a couple different ways to deploy that and subscribe to or host yourself. So I'd like to demystify that a little bit and sort it out, and then we'll look at some other things and step into maybe the wireless after that, the switching in the data center. We might look at the SOAR and XDR solutions and how that integrates into the EDR and the actions that can be automated and taken upon various policies or actions that your users are presenting in your environment. So, guys, I didn't want to get too technical on this first one, but just kind of overview of where you guys see things with Fortinet, why you're in love with it. I'm definitely a fanboy at this point, and looking forward to really kind of stepping into the pool. On my nose, I'm ready to go with it, and I personally will kind of monitor and share, my journey as I step through some of the certification components. As hopefully we have a semi-COVID-free summer and we could get back to some of the in-person events. XenTegra will house and host some of the events ourselves with Fortinet is supporting us in those areas. But then we have like the big Accelerate events that are on deck for this year with Fortinet as well, and looking to attend those in person. I hate that I missed the Orlando and Vegas ones that you guys had last year, but they seem to be super valuable, and the amount of information that customers were able to achieve inside of those sessions is just invaluable. So again, kind of looking forward to checking that out this year. Really hope to get my intern back. She was working with me last summer a little bit towards the end of summer, but the second I showed her the Fortinet solution, she dove right in and started knocking out some of her NSE certifications. So when she gets back on board this summer, I'll definitely have her join. And again, I'll have different folks as the weeks progress here. Hopefully we'll be able to post something every other week with this. But again, this first one kind of diving in with a little bit of overview of the overall Fortinet security fabric. We touched on some of the terms that are used there, a little bit of like how the company's constructed and their go-to-market and how they develop some of those components. But, I'm sure by the time we get through a couple of these, there'll be something new even to chat about. So I think that's part of the excitement that I have for kicking this off. So Kevin, Ryan, and Michael, I greatly appreciate you guys being here. I thought this was a really cool first step in this journey that we're all taking together. Looking forward to doing it again soon.
Oh yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, definitely, gentlemen. So you guys have a great day, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah, you too.